For those of you who know Haiti, you know that it lies not very far off the shores of Miami, Florida. It also lies very close, much closer to Cuba, actually. At the western end of Haiti and the easternmost tip of Cuba, if one were truly an Olympic swimmer, you could probably swim that distance. You could certainly take a sailboat and get back and forth very easily. And the countries of Haiti and Cuba have a very interesting background and connection through 500 years of colonization of this hemisphere. In addition, Haiti, of course, has a very strong relationship with the other country with whom it shares, the island on which it sits, with the Dominican Republic. That's a whole other discussion, but it's there, and we have to recognize it geographically and historically. 1804, Haitian Revolution, at the same time that the United States was still in the throes of slavery and unlikely to give it up for quite a long time. From 1804 until about 1865, Haitians were not permitted inside the United States. There were arguments on the floor of the Congress about whether it would be a provocation to the slaves to permit free Haitians to be inside our boundaries. And indeed, Haitians were not allowed to travel in those days into the U.S. legally. Then you have a situation in which we ended slavery by law, but we certainly didn't end it in terms of our customary cultural practices. And what we have now is de facto segregation by neighborhood, by school, by profession, in a lot of different ways. That period still hangs over and permeates our national life here in the United States. And we're still trying to deal with that history. Now, Haiti, of course, is not a new issue for WILPF. Many people don't know that in 1926, Emily Green Bolge, who was one of the founders of WILPF and who was a professor at Wellesley College, led a delegation to Haiti. Why did she go to Haiti in 1926? Because there was an occupation at that time by the United States Marines. The Marines went in 1915 and basically took gold bullion out of the Haitian treasury and took it up to New York City and deposited it in the National City Bank. So Emily Green Bolge goes to Haiti, and she uses the same word, curiously enough, that Cindy Sheehan used last week. If you've seen the papers or if you've seen any of your internet mail over the past week, you've seen that last week Cindy Sheehan said that she was charging President Bush with the I word, imperialism. This document is just a citation of Emily Green Bolge's report of 1926. It's out of print now, but you can find it in your library or on abebooks.com. Emily Green Bolge in 1926 charged the United States with the I word, imperialism. So I think we have to be very, very clear on what it is that the United States is doing right now in terms of its international policy. One of the major players in the United States in regard to Haiti over the past 20 years is Dr. Paul Farmer. Paul Farmer is a professor at the Harvard School of Public Health. He also conducts a major medical center in Haiti and in Deschapelles, which is in the central plain of Haiti. His book, The Uses of Haiti, which was published about 8 years ago or a little more, has a very interesting chapter. It's called The Coup of 1991. If you read Paul Farmer's book, The Uses of Haiti, look at chapter The Coup of 1991 and see the parallels to the coup of 2004. And that brings us up to date. Last year, in February, the United States and France and some of the other nations that we are allied with, for the second time in his political life, deposed President Aristide.
The people of Haiti and their struggle for return of constitutional democracy, justice, and human rights elected for the first time in 1991 Jean-Bertrand Aristide, an ex-priest. And although Haiti gained its independence 200 years ago, it still had not gained its true freedom. It was still under bondage by the French, by the US government, and other foreign intervention. However, under Aristide, for the first time, it seemed the country was on the verge of tearing down from tyranny, and through the Slavery movement, the country was finally on the road to democracy. The Slavery movement is a movement which President Aristide formed, which represents the majority, which is mainly the poor. The hope of democracy in Haiti was short-lived, unfortunately. After the country's first democratically elected president, for 7 months, Washington helped depose the popular ex-president Jean-Bertrand Aristide. After mass protests by the people into negotiations, he was put back in power. Then again, in February 29, 2004, a coup d'etat promoted by and ultimately carried by the United States government and France and Canada, Haiti's president became the first elected leader to be overthrown, not once, but twice. This particular coup was not about Aristide. It was basically the forces for which he represented, which was, he wanted to eliminate the gap between the rich and the poor. There's a tremendous gap in Haiti between the rich and poor. He wanted to empower the poor and improve their economic situation. And again, this all sounds very good to all of us, which it is. However, the rich, the powerful elite of Haitians, as well as the US government administration, it was a threat to them. And the threat basically was privatization. They did not want that because it represents that cheap labor would be eliminated. US business, as Joan mentioned, exports millions of dollars in cheap labor from Haiti. And some of the cheap labors, for example, with business that do with hands, Fruit of Olom, Disney, and many others. And also the other motivation was Aristide had made a partnership with Cuba, as well as the US. Aristide had requested from France to return millions of dollars. When we get our independence, in order to recognize our independence, they required that Haiti pay them in millions of dollars. And this is the first time you ever heard a country who fight for their independence had to pay to be accepted for their independence. It's needless to say that this coup d'etat has been disastrous for the Haitian people. It's been extreme human rights abuse. The poor people are living under most ferocious repression, which is the most repression in their entire history. Haiti citizens, especially the very poor majority, are suffering under an epidemic of armed violence, beatings, torture, killings, illegal arrests, kidnappings, gun battles between gangs and police and the UN peacekeepers. And part of the problem with the UN peacekeepers is because they are 20 different countries. Most of them, they go into the very poor neighborhood, do not speak the language, and they haven't been given a clear mandate, and basically is they feel they're on armed way, they shoot without asking any questions. There's been mass killing of women and children and infants. The Center of Study of Human Rights, University of Miami, which I will share some of this information, I have a documentary that I will pass on, has reported, and I'm going to quote to you, Haiti's people chant inside a hurricane of violence, constant gunfire, streets are abandoned, and cadavers in a whole neighborhoods are cut off from the outside world. The injured prefer to die at home rather than risk arrest at the hospital. Those who do reach the hospital soak in puddles of their own blood, ignored by doctors. Bodies piled in the morgue, quickly devoured out of recognition by maggots. Cité Soleil, which is a very horribly poor slum, about 250,000 people, it's under virtual lockdown. The neighborhood is known to support, and the reason for it is because the neighborhood is known to support Aristide. Human rights situation is so bad that the UN peacekeeping operation said that parts of Haiti are worse than the Sudan devastated Darfur region, where at least they have NGO, non-governmental agencies, which are providing assistance. In regions such as Cape Haitian, they have no drinking water, no latrines, garbage are not collected, and the result of this, unemployment has increased, food is scarce, price of food has tripled in price, further impoverishing the people. The human free speech is eliminated. Leaders of deposed president of Aristide are in jail, or exile, or hiding. Interim government of U.S. government, France, has put in what they have put in place. The people do not support, and to force the will of the people, Haiti has been taken out of the headlines. But and of course, it's because they cannot justify the racist occupation that currently exists, and also to create a perception that black people cannot govern themselves. Nevertheless, there's been a wave of protests condemning these horrible human rights situation in Haiti. And the Institute of Justice for Democracy, there's been a tremendous amount of protests. For example, July 21, in Brazil, France, 13 US cities have been demonstrating. And meanwhile, also in Haiti, Father Jean Just, who had a campaign 12 days before that in the Brazil consulate in Miami, and he was protesting against the current occupation, and as a result was beaten. And when he went to Haiti, he was arrested and put in jail without any legal. In the situation in the jail, it's like he's in a small room with 12 other prisoners, and they have one bucket to do their business. It's a horrible situation. What's the future for Haiti? Well, the future that the U.S. government and France are planning is for Haiti, its intervention to destroy democracy of the Haitian people, which the Haitian people were trying so hard to establish and build. But we must not let them win. Haitian people are fighting for their lives, and we hope we're going to have your support. We need you to help us to fight this.
They call the Constitution. And if you read the Constitution, it's on one side of that, it will say to you that a treaty is the supreme law of the land. That's Article 6, Clause 2. There's something called the UN Charter. And the UN Charter is a treaty. It's the supreme law of the United States. And Article 6, Clause 2 also says that every judge shall enforce it. So when Schwarzenegger took the oath of office, and when Bush took the oath of office, and when Bolton takes the oath of office, and when Gonzalez takes the oath of office, they are swearing to uphold the UN Charter. It's not some distant, faraway thing. So if you want to read us Article 2.3 in the UN Charter, what you just got there, near the top of the page.
Would you read it if you have it?
Okay. All members shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means in such a manner that international peace and security and justice are not endangered.
Now read 2.4, loud and clear.
All members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations.
Now I want to make clear, when this was written, the people who wrote it knew that they had to write it. The ambassadors from all of the countries in the world who had won in the World War knew that the people of the world would not clean up the mess that they were in and bury their dead and rebuild their houses if they thought there'd be another war in 20 years. So at the time the U.S. government debated this document, they meant what it said. No nation shall use force or threat of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of another nation. That's exactly and precisely what we are now doing in Haiti. And I think it's critical that we as people who are active constantly say that at this precise moment, this precise law is being violated. And there's no point in saying you can't enforce a treaty or all of that. Because the U.S. is carefully enforcing NAFTA. They carefully enforce the WTO. Now they're going to enforce CAFTA, and they will enforce them. And if we do not demand that another treaty, actually a treaty is higher than these things, these are agreements, this is a treaty signed by the President, ratified by the Senate. If we do not insist that the UN Charter is enforced, then we are derelict in our duty, and the Haitians can be angry with us legitimately. Well, now I'll tell you what I call a joke. Have you ever heard of the Convention Against Torture? Raise your hand. Has the U.S. ratified it? How many know whether we've ratified it?
No, we haven't.
We ratified it in 1994.
Yeah.
It's a U.S. treaty, debated in the U.S. Senate, ratified by the U.S. Senate, signed by the President, ratified by the Senate. And it's not only a convention against torture, it's a convention against torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment.
Right.
That's what we are doing today in Haiti. And it is a violation of that treaty. So when you took the oath of office, these people were swearing to uphold the Convention Against Torture. What color are the people, what race are the people in Haiti? Well, have you ever heard of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination? Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah.
Yes.
You've all heard of CEDAW. Have we ratified it?
Yes.
1994, we ratified it. The President signed, the Senate ratified something called the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. Anything we do in Haiti, which is different than what we do in Canada, or in, I can't think of any place else right now, is based in part on the fact that these people are people of color. It's racial discrimination, and it's a direct, specific violation of the Convention on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. How many have heard of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights? How many have heard of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? Mm-hmm. Well, take the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is not a treaty, not enforceable, and cut it in half. And half of it is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. That's half of the UN Universal Declaration. And if the people in leadership in this country wanted us to have any rights, they would emphasize that and not the Universal Declaration. And it seems to me in WILPF and in UNA and everybody else should stop distributing the Declaration of Human Rights and should start distributing the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Do you think we've ratified it? 1992, and it's a joke. George Bush went to China to bawl them out about their human rights violations, and they said, you're a hypocrite, you haven't even ratified the treaty. So Bush came back. Bush the first said, ratify the damn thing. We ratified it. It is the law of the United States, and it forbids every single thing we are doing in Haiti. So what can you do about it? And these are all mentioned on the back of this paper so that you can get an idea. What should we do about it at this moment? It seems to me there are a number of things. How many of you have heard of OIV? No, not OIV. This is the Office of Inspector General. There's a law that was passed 20 years ago that says every single government agency and every part of every federal government agency has an Office of Inspector General. So here's the agency. They're all good friends, and they do whatever they do, and they do what their boss tells them. Here's the Office of Inspector General. It's in the same building, but it has nothing to do with these people. It does not, is not friendly with them, and it takes any complaints against them. The Office of Inspector General. Every single government agency has one, and every part of every federal government agency has one. So when somebody does something in the U.S. government that you think is wrong, it seems to me WILPF should send a complaint to the Office of Inspector General of that department. How do you find them? You find them on the web. The law requires that they be easily accessible. So, is the Department of State doing something illegal in Haiti?
Yes.
Then you need to send a complaint to the Department of State and figure out which part of it Haiti fits in, and send them a complaint. Say, we want you to do something about this violation of the rights in Haiti. What about the U.S. Army? Are they doing anything illegal in Haiti? Mm-hmm. Send a letter to the Office of Inspector General of the Army. What about the FBI and the CIA? Mm-hmm. Send a letter to the Office of Inspector General. Now, I'm not an idealist, and I don't think, a fool. And I wouldn't have told you this 3 years ago because I'd never heard of them. I'm a lawyer, and I should have known about them, but I didn't. But I found out because in very specific instances, the OIG did something important. Remember the World Trade Center and how dangerous it was to work there? Mm-hmm. The EPA made a report saying it's dangerous to work in Ground Zero. The leadership in the EPA forbade them to issue that report. The OIG, I shouldn't put my finger, the OIG made a report saying what is happening is dangerous, and this made national news, and they had to report it. What about the people who were detained in New York? Remember, they were sent to jails and beaten up and everything? The OIG for the Department of Justice did a study. He went to the jails in New Jersey and New York where the people were being held, and he found that they were being tortured. And he made a report, and it made a difference. And it made a difference for a couple of reasons. One is, every 6 months, every report, complaint to the OIG in any department in the United States must be given to 4 people: the chair and the vice chair of the Judiciary Committee in the House and the Senate. Who's vice chair of the Judiciary Committee in the House? John Conyers. Do you know who I mean?
Yeah.
Well, he'll tell Congress what he got in that piece of paper. So if the people in this room were to write a complaint to the OIG of the Department of State in charge of the area of Haiti, make a complaint about what the U.S. is doing, they would have to be reported to the vice chair and vice chair of the House Judiciary Committee, and then John Conyers can stand up and say, this is what is happening, this is the complaint, this is what the OIG found. Same with the Army, same with the FBI, same with the CIA. Now the method by which these treaties I was mentioning, remember the Torture Convention, Race Discrimination Convention, and Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, all have a method of enforcement. It's called reporting. And every so many years, the U.S. government made a commitment when they ratified those treaties to make a report. And those reports are then discussed by the committee. Well, it seems to me that this group should send a report to the Human Rights Committee, which enforces the International Convenant on Civil and Political Rights, and tell them what the U.S. is doing in Haiti is a violation of human rights. Now, I don't just say this because I'm nice, but what happened the other day, and I don't have enough copies, but you can start them around and other people can get copies if they want. The other day, MeichleJohn Institute, Civil Liberties Institute in Berkeley, which I run, executive director of, got an email from something called the UN Human Rights Committee. And this is the committee in Geneva which enforces the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And they said, on October 17th, we expect the U.S. government to file its report, which it should have filed years ago, on what it's doing to enforce the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And if they do not, we are going to question them affirmatively about 2 things. One is violations of human rights under the Patriot Act, and the other is detentions that are illegal or violate human rights in Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo and Iraq and elsewhere. So, they said, we want you to send us by August 29 short, accurate, factual statements of any violations you know of human rights under the Patriot Act or in the detentions anywhere in the world by the U.S. Now, what is happening in Haiti is a violation. It's since 9/11, and they need to get a report about any specific action that you know about, Haiti or anything else, but I'm now talking about Haiti, that has happened, and they've asked them by August 29th. And just to tell you a joke, do you have too many people working in your WILPF office? Of course not, you're understaffed. Well, the UN is much worse understaffed, and not only that, you write it once in English, right? Every single piece of paper that the UN gets has to be translated into 6 languages. So you can't send them a book, and you can't send them a pamphlet, and you can't send them a 5-page article. You have to say very, very briefly, and that's what it says on the paper, on this date, in this place, this police officer arrested this, or this immigration officer arrested this Haitian, or did whatever else they did. And this is what happened, and so on. Here's the proof of it. Very brief, on 1 or 2 pages, so they can translate it into 6 languages. And we need to have you email them to us, and we will send them, or you can email them yourself, and the email address is on there. And I think it's critical that we'll take this step, that we tie ourselves, openly admit, we are tied into the whole community of governance, which starts at the city, county, state, U.S., and UN levels. And when you send something to MeichleJohn, or you send something to anybody, please send a copy from now on. Anything horrible that happens in your community, send a copy to the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva. There are 2 reasons. They will put it in a pile, and when they can use it, they will. But the other thing is, it will teach your Congress member, copy to the UN High Commissioner, that you know that there is a United Nations, and that what he or she is doing is being watched. You tell the mayor, send a copy, UN High Commissioner, the mayor, the police chief, they'll all find out that there's a system and that they are being watched. And in the long run, and I'm not just saying this as an idealist, if you talk to the people in South Africa, they would say that they would not have achieved freedom by now if it hadn't been for parts of the United Nations. I'm not talking about the Security Council, I'm talking about the other 5 organs of the UN helped them. And the same is true in East Timor. The same is true in Haiti. If we are going to help the people of Haiti, we're going to have to do it by using those parts of the UN which are capable of being used. Not the Security Council, the General Assembly, the Economic and Social Council, the Secretary General, the Trusteeship Council, and the International Court of Justice. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. I'm sorry if I talk too fast or too much law, but that's where we're at.
Sans raison.